Before we head on to the Shivering Isles, there's a bit more base game content left that bears mentioning. These are the Daedric and some select side quests of Oblivion. The Daedric quests are the work of Mark Nelson, at least that's what I've been led to believe, and nobody's taking credit on these, despite many of them being some of the best content Oblivion has to offer. The quests are gated by level requirements, and I did many of them during the events of the other quest lines. So you'll be seeing our character jumping around various parts of the playthrough. We'll handle these in the order that I did them, so let's begin. Also, I should throw in here, many of the Daedric princes have sibilance issues, where the sharp S sounds are piercing. I've tried to correct that for your benefit, but it does bear mentioning. Sheogorath. Shigarath's quest is offered at level 2. All 15 of the available Daedric princes have shrines, and most of them have offerings the player must give to get the quest, which the player can learn at the shrine from the priest. So, funny thing, the Making of Oblivion documentary shows Mark Nelson and Ken Rolston trying to fix a bug with the Daedra shrines where the NPCs walk around constantly, which can be annoying if you're trying to record footage of the prince's monologue and you keep getting pushed around because the NPCs can't decide which patch of grass to pray at. Shigarath in particular wants an offering of a lesser soul gem, a head of lettuce, and some yarn. He's a bit random.
Come visit again, or I'll pluck out your eyes!
Oh, right, the name. In Morrowind we get this line.
What is it, mortal? Have you come to be of service to Shigarath?
Despite putting that in the video, and pointing out that this is the pronunciation of the name that Morrowind gives you, people still leave embarrassing comments about how I said the name wrong. But yeah, when the voice actor changed from Jeff Baker to Wes Johnson, it came with some changes to his character. Oh, but Wes Johnson was not the original Sheogorath voice actor in Oblivion. Pre-Shivering Isles, the voice actor was Craig Seckler, who voiced all of the Elven femboys.
Another mortal dares to summon me, and already I'm bored.
But enough about me. Let's talk about you. I could turn you into a goat, or a puddle, or a bad idea. I could make you eat your own fingers, or fall in love with a cloud. Perhaps I could make you into something useful. Let's find out.
Sheogorath's presentation in Morrowind was very deadpan. He asked you to do something ridiculous, but he asked normally because being ridiculous was his normal. I'll have a lot more to say about this in the Shivering Isles section. For now, let's focus on our task. Shaggy wants us to mess with a Khajiit settlement that is superstitious. We're to go there, ask about the Kashara prophecy, and then fulfill it. We're directed to Ribasa, who after a disposition check will tell us of 3 plagues: vermin, famine, and fear. We have to figure this out on our own, but it turns out the local tavern keep is a cheese collector who keeps a potent Olroy cheese locked in a display box. We steal the cheese and place it in a pot over a fire, which draws a swarm of rats to the village. Ribasa panics and places rat poison everywhere, killing all the rats. He's taken this as potentially the first stage of the prophecy. If we then take the rat poison and place it in the sheep trough, they'll eat it and die, whereupon Sheogorath congratulates us and handles the 3rd step for us, making it rain burning dogs.
Oh, this doesn't look good.
That
Not
is a
good at
bad
all.
puppy. That is a bad puppy.
The village is in panic, and Sheogorath, pleased, awards us the Wabbajack. The Wabbajack transforms creatures into other forms, sometimes less dangerous, usually more dangerous. It's a fine toy, but that it only works on creatures as well as the limited number of uses means it's easy to forget about. Still, I enjoy the idea of a powerful lich who spent years uncovering and undergoing a ritual to attain immortality, unparalleled in power by the mortal world and immune to the effects of age and disease, getting smoked in the side of the head by the Wabbajack and turning into a sheep, then dying almost instantly. Namira.
You dare approach my shrine, child of the light? You who walks this plain basking in the light of the warm, cruel sun?
Namira's quest is available at level 5 and requires no offering, but does necessitate the player's personality value be below 20, which is impossible by default and requires every character to use some kind of supplement like cheap wine to reach that value. Namira wants to help some Skyrim fans who are being harassed by priests of Archay, who won't stop trying to get them to go outside. She wants us to help by putting out the torches and letting her followers kill them. If we touch the priests ourselves, we'll fail the quest. Overall, it's pretty easy.
You have cleansed my followers' perfect darkness. The forgotten are free to wallow in their misery. Take my ring. Let it bring pain to others who would wish it upon you. Namira blesses you.
The Ring of Namira has a static effect which reflects damage 12% and reflects spells 10%. I kept this ring throughout the entire game, which should speak volumes to its usefulness to the player, despite how simple her quest is otherwise. Azura. Azura's quest unlocks at level 2. It may seem that I've done things out of order, however Azura's offering is Glow Dust, which comes from Will-o'-the-Wisps who only start showing up at level 9 as bosses and level 11 as general enemies. There are only 2 ways to get Glow Dust before level 9, which are the quests Mystery at Harlan's Watch, late in the Fighters Guild, or Blood of the Daedra midway through the main quest. We donate at the hours of dawn or dusk, and
I have seen your name, traveler, and heard it whispered in twilight. I ask a service which holds promise of fame and reward.
Azura requests we slay some of her followers who've been afflicted with vampirism. Harsh, just like Morrowind. The followers had acquired the affliction after slaying a vampire themselves and then sealed themselves away in its lair. Guys, you had 3 days to go pray at a shrine to get cured. Shepherd's pie and mandrake root would also do it. No? Okay, I just think you're being overdramatic. I mean, hell, I've been cured. Or wait, no, this is earlier in the timeline. I'll get cured later.
Thank you, mortal. Their spirits are free, and henceforth above my shrine, 5 bright candles shall burn forever in memory of their sacrifice. For your service, take this token, that your deeds might be entered in the Book of Fate.
Azura's star is, well, do I need to even introduce it? It's funny that this is the artifact the game suggests you sacrifice as part of the main quest. I can only imagine the horror from the thought of sacrificing this item. Azura's star is a reusable soul gem which can fit any creature's soul, big or small. It can't accept black souls, yet. Azura's star is so ubiquitous with Elder Scrolls that it exists in the Oblivion construction set, even if you haven't loaded Oblivion yet. It's important if you plan on making a consistent use out of enchanted items with charge, like the Wabbajack as a poor example. It also, however, invalidates any of the lesser soul gems in the process, since you don't really need to keep any of those around anymore. One way to get good use out of it is to keybind a super lethal soul trap spell to one button and the star to the next to make sure you keep your gear topped off. Sanguine. Sanguine's quest opens up at level 8 and requires a pricey bottle of Cyrodiilic brandy. I tried and failed to do this while doing the Fighters Guild work. I'm fairly certain it ended up breaking the infiltration quest my first time around. Anyways.
Another mortal. Come to beg Sanguine to add a bit of spice to an otherwise drab existence.
Sanguine wants us to go to a dinner party in Leyawiin tomorrow night. Buddy, your shrine is halfway across the continent from Leyawiin. Doesn't matter, the party is delayed until our arrival, despite not being invited. We're to attend the party and cast the Stark Reality spell on the guests. It has a small drain health effect, which registers it as assault. When it hits, all of the guests, ourselves included, lose all of our items and will immediately find ourselves wanted. However, doing what I call a pro-gamer move, you can cast the spell and then immediately use an invisibility potion to bypass the legal challenge of this quest. We still have to get back to the shrine despite losing all of our items, which is a challenge and involved months of whoring ourselves out at taverns to pay for carriage rides. Skingrad is quite a ways away from Leyawiin, after all.
A rousing success, mortal. And it appears you joined in the festivities as well. Good for you. You need to lighten up a bit. You'll find your equipment in that chest over there. And here's a little something for your efforts. Maybe we'll celebrate again sometime.
Sanguine's Rose. Martin has an interesting line about it.
I never thought to see this again. I once possessed it, briefly. A lifetime ago, it seems now. To obtain it and then give it up. I honor your dedication to our cause.
The implications. Of all the Daedric princes for Martin to have served, you picked Sanguine. I hope it's not because his shrine is close to Kvatch. Or I hope you didn't move his shrine close to Kvatch because of that line of dialogue. The Rose, when its spell hits a target, summons a random Daedra to aid you. It's not necessarily an ally to the player, so using it is effectively a wild card in fights. At level 8 it's great because the Daedra you summon can be more powerful than the enemies you're fighting, later on, less so. Nocturnal. Nocturnal's quest is only one of 2 which have no extra requirements, you just have to hit level 10.
Night among the strangers. Secrets in the dark. Nocturnal is here. But my eye is blind and proud, stolen from its shrine and hid in dark waters. To steal from a god is most unwise.
Nocturnal wants us to retrieve her eye, which was stolen from her. This happens to you a lot, doesn't it? How come Azura doesn't have these issues? First the Grey Cowl, then the Eye of Nocturnal, and soon the Skeleton Key. I cannot help but think you're either enabling this kind of behavior or lying and simply saying the previous person you rewarded actually stole from you. After a short investigation in Leyawiin and an eavesdropping section that requires a small amount of stealth, they put the eye in a cave full of trolls, which is fair enough, since it probably won't get taken, but that's a huge amount of risk to rely on being able to sneak past trolls just to stash your goods. All these trolls are named Ash Clan or Kapler Clan trolls. Maybe we were going to get more named monsters originally, one dungeon crawl later, and...
My eye is returned, and I once again see into the darkness that is your world. We mock the thieves, for bitter is their loss. You, mortal, may take this. It shall open the secrets of dark places for you.
Wait, the skeleton key to the skeleton card? That's a stupid joke, but I'm gonna make it as often as this is the first thing I think of. Hey, Nocturnal, isn't this thing super dangerous? Like Mehrunes Razor changing yourself into the Dragonborn kinda dangerous? Unlocking metaphysical concepts dangerous? I guess that part of the lore wasn't written until Skyrim. The Skeleton Key, as mentioned previously, is an unbreakable lockpick that also boosts security by 40 points. It basically allows you to turn off the lockpicking minigame and just spam auto attempts. This is because they changed the fundamental way lockpicking works, so the Skeleton Key has to be a good alternative to normal lockpicks, which are universally homogeneous in quality. I favored lockpicking on my character as opposed to using magic due to my condition where I don't naturally regenerate magic, discouraging casual use of magic. Simply put, the Skeleton Key is too valuable an artifact for an Atronet character to even contemplate sacrificing to Martin. For everyone else though, well, why aren't you using alteration magic? Peryite. Peryite also requires no extra sacrifice, although this time that's likely because the worshippers who usually tell you what the princes want are all frozen in place.
This one moves. A welcome change. So, mortal, you have found my shrine, and you have seen my followers. They are an embarrassment to me. The fools cast a spell in the hopes of summoning me to them. It was prideful and foolish, and it has had its consequences.
Peryite's followers attempted to summon him but failed and ended up trapping themselves in Oblivion. Oh, an adventure in a game called Oblivion to a Daedric prince, it's just the Deadlands. You guys couldn't make a basic-ass enclosed swamp area for Peryite's realm? Peryite, with his disease themes, misses his chance to be relevant in Morrowind, and he's not making up for that by having us do the 61st Oblivion Gate, this time without the Sigil Stone.
You have returned my followers, mortal. The natural order is restored, and for this, I thank you. Perhaps they have learned the folly of attempting to touch a Daedra prince. Take this with my blessing. May it bring you order.
Still, despite all that, Peryite's reward is substantial. Spellbreaker. It's hardly the most powerful shield the player can get in armor value, but its Reflect Spell 30% enchantment is insane, especially when paired with our natural 50% spell absorption. You aren't capable of making anything even as remotely powerful in Oblivion. You may say the Escutcheon of Coral is better. I would counter that it only gets better after level 25, and I ended the playthrough at level 28. whereas I was able to get Spellbreaker a quarter of the way through my playthrough. Malakath. Malakath's quest is available at level 10 and he likes troll fat. Let's hear what he has to say.
That characterizing a whole species in your game as ugly, warlike, and malevolent might be harmful to real-world groups regularly mischaracterized as ugly, warlike, and malevolent.
Sorry, let's use the better orc-exclusive version.
I love greenskin orc content. That's what I'm all about, pal. Yeah.
Nice present. Good. And from a nice orc, too. Double good. Orcs are smart. They know. You want something, you do what boss tells you. So listen good. Lord Drag took my ogres. Poxy Whiteskin says he owns them. Lying maggot! They're my ogres! So, this Lord Drag, he puts my little brothers in chains, working in the mines, and it makes me mad. So, you get over to Lord Drad's estate. Get my ogres loose and get them out. Do it now. For me, the boss!
Lord Drad is a Dunmer skirting the Empire's very incredibly violent history with abolition by using ogres instead of humans as slaves. Of course, this isn't the only reason Malakath is invested.
I bought it for a song from a foolish orc. My ogres mine the gold, and I reap the reward.
When the ogres are freed, they'll attempt to kill the guards and enslave the Drads to work the fields. This pleases Malakath.
Good job. No one owns ogres but me! And I fixed that maggot. The ogres own Drad. Make Drad eat death. Now you get a present. Keep up the good work and be nice to my little brothers.
Yeah, that's not going to happen if ogres keep being generic enemies. Anyways, Malakath doesn't get the cycle of retaliation, or more likely, really doesn't care, as the Greenskins' continued societal subsistence is crucial to his continued worship. Truly, what an amazing parallel to real-life races. Whenever I think of orcs, I'm immediately reminded of the struggle of inner Australian rock warblers and their plight compared to their mouse warbler counterparts.
And Malakath is not popular at parties.
You don't say. Our reward is Volendrung, which is kind of terrible. It's interesting that the hammer, which originally belonged to the dwarves but was taken over by Malakath, has had an increasingly corrupted appearance as time has gone on. A neat visual detail that ESO completely missed by just reiterating the Skyrim design, when during that time period it would have looked like it belonged in a Warhammer game. Anyways, it's a two-handed blunt weapon and its notable quality is being exceptionally durable. It does middling damage, however, and its enchantment does not substitute its later game weakness. Drain health 5 points for 20 seconds means the target's health is drained by 5, but restores at the end of those 20 seconds. It's only temporary damage, and as such you typically need a large amount of drain health to offset that weakness. It does paralyze for 3 seconds, which is good, but its charge to cost ratio is such that you may find yourself having to recharge the weapon every 2 or 3 enemies you fight with it. All that and the general bias against two-handed weapons in Oblivion makes Volendrung a good pick for the sacrifice, which is a shame. I had this realization that there's an infinite lockpick for thieves and an infinite soul gem for mages, but no infinite repair hammer for fighters. Perhaps Volendrung would have been suited to serving a double role as such. I can't really think where else such a hammer would fit, considering none of the Daedra really represents smithing. That's more a Zenithar thing, really. Meridia. Meridia's quest unlocks at level 10 and requires an offering of an undead ingredient like bone meal, ectoplasm, or mort flesh.
By the detritus of the profane I am brought forth, and by your offering you have made the profane your interest mortal. The undead are foul, unnatural things. Some of my rivals take pleasure in these abominations. Not Meridia. I wish these creatures destroyed.
There's actually some ectoplasm submerged in the ground at the shrine, likely as a development tool, although I don't know why you wouldn't just use a console command in testing. Meridia's quest is super basic. Go to a cave, kill 5 necromancers, and return.
Well done. Those creatures were an affront to all life, and I have paid the price for their actions. Take this ring and go with my blessing.
Meridia's ring, the Ring of Khajiit, is very powerful. There is no consistency between the quality or complexity of the Daedric quest and its reward. You may spend half an hour fulfilling a prophecy to get a toy like the Wabbajack, and you might spend a couple minutes doing a short dungeon to get a ring with 35% chameleon. The Ring of Khajiit is also kind of weird in that twice it was used as a Meridia reward and once as a Mephala reward, despite the enchantment clearly leaning towards Mephala. That's the sort of thing that causes decades-long lore discussions about the intricate relationship between Meridia and Mephala. Yeah, okay, we can do that, but I'm gonna need reference photos. Okay, basically, I think the wrong prince got the wrong item because they have similar names. It's that easy. Mephala. Funny we mentioned Mephala because it's time for her quests at level 15 with an offering of Nightshade.
Call me web spinner. Pluck but a single thread, and the weave unravels.
Yeah, tell me why Meridia has your ring.
Don't spoil my scheme.
Mephala notes that the village of Bleaker's Way has two families living in it. One Nordic and one Dunmer, who are living in harmony. She wants to upset this balance by staging 2 murders and planting evidence. Yes, this is the person who is most definitely not making up that Sithis worship stuff. It's weird that the conflict starts after both family patriarchs are framed for the other's murder, like they both died on the same night. It's not possible for them to have murdered each other. It might be better if the quest plays out differently based on how the player approaches it, like maybe if the Nord is burned to death and the daggers planted, one of the Dunmer might point out that the cause of death doesn't match the murder weapon.
Well done, little web spinner. Is there a prettier sight than friends at war? Take pleasure in the strife you have caused, mortal. Savor the divine essence of a well-spun plot, and here's a little needle to help you stitch your own tangled tapestries.
Our reward is the Ebony Blade, a blade that has appeared in every Elder Scrolls game except Morrowind, surprisingly enough. It's quite powerful, only really topped by a Daedric longsword with an Absorb Health Transcendent Sigil Stone, which is a mouthful, but it isn't that far from players at level 15. Because it absorbs health, as long as the player keeps this thing charged, they can funnel their offense into their defense. Vermina. Vermina is a level 5 Daedra quest, which seems like I may have forgotten about her the first time around, but no, she wants Black Soul Gems, so I had to wait until I was a ways into the Mages Guild questline to be able to do this.
We meet again, mortal, for we have met before, whether you know it or not. When you mutter in your sleep, you speak to me. When you waken wet with sweat, you've just left my house. I dwell in your dreams. I savor your nightmares. Now you will serve me.
Vermina wants us to retrieve her orb from the wizard Arkved. It has, however, transformed his tower into a nightmare. It's interesting to see all the different ways the designer can recycle other level props, which is not a diss. This whole section is quite creative. You have the upside down dining hall, then later it's oversized. We get to Arkved's bedchamber and grab the orb. He's permanently asleep, so he's not a boss or anything like that.
My orb is returned, and Arkved will live out the rest of his days in nightmare. It is fitting. You have proved yourself, mortal. It is fitting as well that you should bear my token.
Vermina's reward is the Skull of Corruption, which creates a corrupted clone of its target NPC for 30 seconds. This is pretty fun, and I liked bringing it out for boss fights. It's also buggy due to how it works. There's a duplication glitch tied to it if you have the Staff of Worms. There's also 2 different methods of making a permanent clone of yourself using the Skull of Corruption. Hircine. Hircine, my man, welcome back from the Blood Moon. He's a level 17 Daedra and wants a wolf or bear pelt as an offering.
Summoned my prey. The hare crouches before the fox's muzzle. Perhaps I shall task you, mortal. Sent you to hunt for my amusement.
Jonathan Bryce is that voice, and if you're ever convinced the voice actors in Oblivion are bad, recognize that this guy also voiced the Argonians, Khajiit, Nords, and Orc males. Most of the Daedric princes served as an opportunity for the normal voice actors to flex their muscles, even if their recordings have some sibilance issues. Hircine wants us to hunt the last unicorn. Oh, sorry, second to last unicorn. Thanks, Creation Club. The unicorn is an exceptionally tough creature, resisting normal weapons, paralysis, poison, and resisting 50% of magic and reflecting 20% of physical damage. If that isn't tough enough, it's guarded by 3 special minotaurs, all of whom would be challenging in their own right. Their main weakness is the hunter's tool, the bow. Reflect damage only works on physical damage, not ranged damage, which may well be intentional given we're working for the hunter god. So, after a few minutes of backtracking and taking pot shots, the 4 enemies go down, and with the unicorn horn in hand, I return to Hircine.
Yes, Hunter, make your offering. Did you taste its flesh and drink its blood? Never waste the spoils of a kill. You've pleased me, Hunter. Take my token and wear it well. Hereafter, take your prey and whisper my name.
Our reward is the Savior's Hide, which has quite literally gotten weaker with each iteration. It started life as an armor set designed to help the player against Mehrunes Dagon in Battlespire by reflecting 100% of physical damage. And then in Morrowind it was downgraded to resisting magicka 60%, which was still pretty amazing. Now it's down to 25% resist magicka, and in Skyrim it will drop further to 15% resist magicka with 50% poison resistance. And then Blades, which I don't normally count as an Elder Scrolls game anyways, lowered the effect to just 6 points of spell resistance. Oblivion's incarnation is still better than the best resist magic sigil stone. I suspect the goal was to avoid players heavily stacking resist magic like in Morrowind to invalidate spellcasters. To that I would say, change weakness to magic so that it can apply to targets with 100% resist magic anyways, and make NPCs who can recognize when their spells aren't doing anything and switch out to a weakness to magic spell to compensate. That may be well outside the bounds of Oblivion. I'm talking TES 6 magic AI tactics here. Molag Bal. Poor Molag Bal. You didn't ask to be the Daedric face of Elder Scrolls Online. You were thrust into that role, copying a younger, sexier Daedric prince's plan to conquer Tamriel. You were better than that. You were the guy who taught Vivek about Chim. You were the originator of vampires. Your only crime was resembling the other half of Satan. Molag Bal is a level 17 prince who wants an offering of a lion pelt, for some reason.
Another mortal come to do my bidding. I only wish suffering and death. You will bring me both.
Molag wants us to go to a guy's house who has sworn against violence and push him into murdering us with a cursed mace. The player has to figure out both the best time to provoke him and figure out how to get the mace into his hands, which is to drop it and start a fight. This may take a while given how high our health is. It reminds me of the pilgrimage quest where the player's expected to drown themselves in Morrowind.
Well, it seems you've accomplished the task set out for you. Well done. Another man damned, another ruined soul. But you'll still get your prize, won't you? I think it was worth it, don't you? Keep up the good work, little mortal.
This was also Jonathan Bryce's voice, and I think he was leaning a little too heavily into the Khajiit voice for this. It's funny because Wes Johnson's Molag Bal from Morrowind fit the character way better. The Mace of Molag Bal does a lot of damage, but it comes with a terrible enchantment. Absorb Magicka is an awesome effect. I wish it showed up way more often. Even fighter NPCs still have Magicka values that we can steal from. But Absorb Strength, while sounding good, has no effect duration, meaning that without the unofficial patch, it doesn't actually do anything. Boethia. Boethia is one of the 3 Daedric princes that require the highest level to start their quest, level 20. His offering is a Daedric heart.
Why do you summon me? You are not one of my faithful. Do you hope to be counted among my chosen? Then prove yourself to me, mortal.
He's also presenting as a male in Cyrodiil. Daedric princes don't have genders because they don't have sex. Okay, we did talk about Molag Bal just now, so to clarify, they don't reproduce. Instead, they simply take forms that fall into mortal gender definitions. That's why the big-tittied goth Daedra girlfriend is called a prince. Boethia doesn't care, which makes having lengthy arguments about his gender pointless. Boethia wants us to enter his realm, which of course is just the Deadlands again, although at least this time it fits, and fight in a tournament. There are 9 champions to beat, all of whom align with a different race, and we replace the 10th Breton champion. Since we're at level 20, all of the champions will be armed and armored extremely well, and we come with a host of spells, poisons, and potions to boot. And we can't leave until we're done, which is one of the few times Bethesda really makes the player commit to a gauntlet in Oblivion. It can be cheesed, however. Since this is the Deadlands, it's easy to make NPCs go into the lava and just die. I personally would have set this in a closed environment, just a series of rooms forming a circle with the starting point in the middle. Upon our departure,
I greet you, Chosen One. A victory in my tournament of 10 bloods brings great honor. Take Goldbrand, sheathe it in your enemies, and offer their souls as praise to me.
Goldbrand is one of the best swords in Oblivion in terms of raw damage potential. You can barely edge it out with a Daedric longsword using a Transcendent Sigil Stone. Let's hold a best sword contest later. Clavicus Vile. I find it funny that since Clavicus Vile's quest involves Todd Howard as a voice actor, it's a bit broken.
A mortal! Wonderful. Always a pleasure. Perhaps you'll do service for me, mortal, and I'll reward you. A fair bargain, don't you think?
At level 20, Clavicus wants an offering of $60. However, for most people, this is not how the quest starts. Because the quest does not enable Umbra after starting, Umbra can actually be visited at any time, any level. Her sword is very powerful, and her armor, while leveled, can be taken off at level 1 and is identical in stats to Orcish, or taken off at level 15 and will be identical to Ebony armor. And since her sword is a quest item, it currently has 0 weight. She's a challenging fight, but a lot of metagamers do it early for the weightless sword and keep it until level 20. The sequence is actually supposed to go like this. Clavicus sends us to get the sword, Umbra from Pel's Gate. Umbra, if you recall, was a Morrowind character and weapon. The player can encounter Umbra, who will tell them that they've done everything and only wish to die in battle, which I obliged. The last living dwarf, Yagrum Bagarn, wrote in Morrowind that Umbra was created by an ancient witch to trap souls. The book Umbriel would expand on this lore to make Umbra a Clavicus Vile artifact originally, which is why Barbas, his servant, comes with us and insists that we shouldn't bring the sword to Clavicus? I guess the implication is that the evil part of Clavicus was split off into the sword, and he'll stop being the Daedric Prince of fun mercantilism if he reunites with it. I guess him getting it back is now confirmed, not canon. Thanks, Creation Club! Anyways, a Pel's Gate villager says their apprentice came in contact with the sword and left with it, and is now staying at a nearby Ayleid ruin. Convenient. One fight later and we're presented with a choice. Alpha Male, where we go to Clavicus and tell him that we're keeping the sword, or Beta Male, where we go to Clavicus, give him the sword and take his mask, or Omega Male, where we keep the sword as long as we fancy and return it later for that sweet 100% completion. My son, it is your choice. Do you take this powerful sword Umbra, capable of perpetually soul-trapping your enemies? Or do you take the Mask of Clavicus Vile, a heavy armor helm equal to a Daedric helm that fortifies personality 20 points?
You've brought the sword! Now give it to me, as we agreed. Umbra and I have unfinished business.
Yes, and...
Excellent! A pitiful sword with a pitiful soul in exchange for a mask fit for a god. You've gotten the better of this bargain, mortal. Now, I have business to attend to. Run along. Perhaps I'll be looking for you again.
No, and...
You would dare? We had a bargain, little hero. You would risk my wrath for a pitiful little sword? I will be watching you, mortal, and waiting.
I take the biggest sign of proof that Umbra isn't Daedric in nature as the fact that the player can't sacrifice the sword to Martin. That said, I do wish it counted on the artifacts collection sheet so that players trying to 100% weren't forced to choose the mask option every time. Personality is a dump stat, and the Helm of the Crusader is a way better version of this helmet. It's a shame too, because the mask is awesome looking and used to be useful back in Morrowind. Hermaeus Mora, the final Daedric prince. Oh yeah, Mehrunes Dagon didn't get a quest, but that was because he was kind of the antagonist of the game, and as we discussed, we did his bidding during the main queue. Anyways, after completing the 14 other Daedric quests and after starting Blood of the Daedra, the player may be approached by Casta Flavis in their sleep, summoning them to the shrine of Hermaeus Mora. So, by necessity, the player has to be level 20. I suspect this may be a quest of last resort for the player if they somehow manage to lose every other possible sacrifice.
A few have served my brethren, and now you come to serve me. I am Hermaeus Mora, past, present, and future. are as one to me.
It is interesting that Hermaeus Mora says we served its brethren, but doesn't point out our lack of service to Mehrunes Dagon. Almost like he knows doing the main quest is serving Dagon's purpose. Skyrim definitely improved his voice, no question, which is funny because both iterations are actually just Wes Johnson. Hermaeus Mora wants us to capture a soul from each of the 10 races, which is easy if you target the bandit population.
You have served me well, and I am pleased. I give you this, the Agma Infinium. Knowledge given by me to Xerxes is recorded within. Read it and gain knowledge of yourself. Go now, learn, and remember.
The Agma Infinium, similar to the Bitter Cup of Morrowind, is a powerful tool for leveling. Kind of. Since you can't get the Agma Infinium until level 20, the early game benefit of, say, raising your endurance isn't able to be appreciated. When you read it, it offers the player 3 paths, each boosting 2 attributes and 3 skills, 10 points. Firstly, there are no benefits to using the book to boost skills past skill level 100. None of the skills you can boost with it will do anything extra at 110. So me getting to heavy armor 110 is pointless. Attributes, however, will. You will continue to increase your max encumbrance with strength, speed with speed, magicka with intelligence, and magicka regeneration with willpower. You can optimize using the book if you get all 3 skills to 90 and the attributes to 100. The best use in that respect would be the Path of Spirit, as destruction and restoration are handily the worst skills to level of the bunch. I don't really see any benefits to the Path of Shadow, as its skills are easy to train and agility is a shadow of its former self. Path of Steel, then, is what I chose, for the strength and speed benefits. With this marks the end of the Daedra section. It's a mix of interesting and boring quests, and I've been led to believe it's the work of Mark Nelson. He created the Daedra quest from Morrowind and would go on to fill the lead design position for the Shivering Isles, while Bruce Nesmith was in the design director position. The thing is, a lot of these Daedra quests feel exactly like their Morrowind iterations. You talk to a statue, it tells you to go somewhere, and either kill something or perform some task. You return and get rewarded with an item. The falter here is fast travel. Ken Rolston said in an interview that Mark Nelson hated fast travel. I pointed out in the fighter skill section how that stance didn't make sense with how the quests were written. And it's possible that it was designed after this issue was resolved at Bethesda, whereas most of the Daedra quests were on paper before then. See, the thing is, the reason the Daedra quests in Morrowind worked was that they were exactly that, quests. Most of the time you had a significant amount of traveling through dangerous territory, both to find the shrine and then to do the quest proper. I was playing some TES 3MP with a friend and we decided to do Molag Bal's quest to get him the mace, and we failed the quest. Not because we did it wrong, but because even with 2 of us, our characters just weren't prepared for the high-level challenge. Plus, you can't reload saves in multiplayer, so when you die, you just go back to a shrine. And Molag Bal's quest is literally just go to this cave, kill these Daedra. Despite failing, this quest was a highlight of our adventure due to the navigation and exploration that was involved, despite myself having done this same exact quest only a couple months prior for the Morrowind video. In Oblivion, travel is never a factor in the quest itself thanks to fast travel. Recognizing this, you may have noticed that most of these quests took place in areas that were extremely close to the shrine itself, the notable exception being Sanguine's quest, likely because it may have taken place in Skingrad, the wine city originally, and was changed when the vampire stuff got added. If you don't know, Oblivion was designed in white box environments. This means that rather than Bethesda loading up the entire game to test their ideas, you were always working with just a couple cells and whatever items you wanted or needed that day. From a design perspective, it's easier if most of the Daedra quests involve the player just going over the next hill and completing it. There's almost a sense of rebellion from this, like Nelson is challenging Howard's fast travel philosophy. And in watching a lot of videos on Oblivion, I've yet to actually see anyone else point out that most of these quests take place in the same general area as the statue. Probably because these people, even if they played Morrowind, found relief in having the adventure part of their adventure game cut out. The problem is, when you remove the travel element from these quests, having a quest where you go to X and kill Y is suddenly extremely bare bones. And Nelson probably understood that, which is why he opposed the idea. Bethesda was essentially putting themselves in a situation where their old standards of quests just didn't work, not because the idea isn't sound, but because accessibility trumped aesthetic style. Which is probably why Mephal's quest was the exception rather than the rule. Still, between the unique idea of sacrificing items to access the quests, the level requirements, and general idea of working for actual gods, the Daedric quests generally remain a highlight of the game for me. We're nearing the end here, and I've just thrown a bunch of Daedric items at you, so I feel it's necessary to discuss leveled items and metagaming. The Daedric items aren't leveled, likely another holdover of Nelson's old-school design philosophy. There's rarely any leveled items in the Fighters Guild as well, go figure. Now, the idea behind item scaling, or leveled items, probably went as follows. Players are getting powerful items very easily in our game Morrowind. We don't want players to get bored at level 15, so let's make it so that the player is constantly challenged and constantly receiving even better items. This is an attempt to solve that power threshold problem I mentioned in Morrowind. Now the funny thing is, this design philosophy would actually have worked better on Vvardenfell, where there was so much more content. But they implemented this design philosophy while simultaneously cutting back on the amount of content in the game. The example I like is the Spelldrinker amulet. This is the only amulet in the game the player can get with spell absorption, which won't come from randomized loot, but it's leveled in 4-level intervals. The effectiveness of its enchantment comes from the moment the player completes the Ulterior Motives quest for the Mages Guild. I got it at level 15, which means I got its version that only does 18% spell absorption. The problem is, I used this amulet throughout the entire game, not because of any personal connection to it. It's a piece of bling that Raminus gives us so we're not mad at him for betraying our trust. But because even with all of the dungeons and Oblivion gates I ran after this point, I didn't find anything to really replace it. The problem isn't that I was stuck with one amulet for most of the game. Most of my Morrowind characters were. The problem is that I'm stuck with its weaker form. The game is almost challenging the player to grind to level 30 so they get all of the best leveled items. This actually got worse with Skyrim, which cut back on the overall number of leveled items but greatly expanded the level ranges of the ones that still exist. I personally would prefer to get consistent items at consistent times. Even if it's like the Ebony Blade where the sword will be outclassed in 10 levels, the solution to that system is not to make the Ebony Blade leveled. The solution is to raise its rank in the totem pole, which is what Skyrim did. Skyrim largely addressed this problem. I take the few leveled items that do exist as a rebellious designer and nothing more. You can practically see the divisions and staff on the topic just by their quests. Coleman, Nesmith, and Nelson didn't seem to like leveled items, so they rarely rewarded them. Chapin and Pagliarulo seemed to love leveled items. Emil especially, given how many bonus items he awarded with level scaling. Is it any wonder then that Fallout 4 ended up being a looter shooter? I think one potential fix to the system may be some kind of upgrade system, where once you reach the higher level brackets, the enchantment can be leveled up to what you would have gotten if you'd completed the quest at that level. So what is the best of the best? Let's put the build I came up with forward then. To start, Breton Atronak. Resist magic 50%, absorb magic 50%. I'm basically already an anime protagonist shrugging off all the special attacks. Spellbreaker from Periite's Shrine, reflect spell 30%. Spelldrinker, absorb spell 26%, only 18 on my character. Ring of Namira, reflect spell 10%, reflect damage 12%. Blade Turnhood from the Mehrunes Razor DLC, reflect damage 15%, resist normal weapons 15%, shield 17%. Raiment of the Crimson Scar from Vile Layer DLC, reflect damage 35%. In total, 40% spell reflection, 76% spell absorption, 50% magic resistance, 62% damage reflection, 15% normal weapons resistance, 17% shield. If someone attacks me with magic or physical damage, they'll do more damage to themselves than to me. And we've still got a free ring slot for a wild card. Now for the weapons. Daedric Bow, enchanted to do 10 points of shock damage for 3 seconds. Even with console commands, I couldn't reopen the Oblivion gates, which means I was cut off from the very best Transcendent Sigil Stones. Otherwise, I would opt for a Transcendent Sigil Stone with damage health, which will also do 30 damage, but instantly, and you get 9 more uses. Sneak attacks with a bow will give us 3 times damage, which is not as powerful as people make it out to be because it only applies to the damage of the bow and arrow, not the enchantment or poison, which is where the fun begins. So first, we have our character, who I'm going off of the final save, so they have a marksman skill of 56. I'll put the UESP numbers next to it, which assumes a max marksman value of 100. The Daedric bow does 12 damage, and the Daedric arrow does 9 damage, which is a cumulative 21 damage for an ordinary shot, and 63 damage for our stealth attack. That's pretty good. Our character with a blade of 66 can only pull 42 damage out of Goldbrand in a single swing, and can up that to 252 damage with a 6x sneak attack. However, the Daedric bow is ranged, making stealth far easier, but Goldbrand can hit multiple times in the time it takes to land a second shot with a bow. It's fairly balanced. Let's introduce a dump truck to the equation. This is my super poison, I call it Game Over. I don't even know what's in it anymore. Before I show you what it does, this is the best a default poison can do. Damage health 30 points. It's a nice topper to our bow damage. Time for the dump truck. Damage health 6 points, 25 seconds. Fire damage, 8 points, 31 seconds. Shock damage, 8 points, 30 seconds. Add all that damage up and you get 638 points of damage. Some characters might resist the fire damage, and some characters might resist the magic damage, and Argonians will resist the poison, but in general, if this arrow hits you, let alone from a stealth attack, that's 701 points of damage. I don't even need the stealth damage at this point. I can just run around putting this poison in people and watch as the bodies hit the floor. And if they resist it, I made a spell that does 100% poison weakness, doubling the damage in a normal person and rendering people formerly immune to poison now vulnerable. Nothing is funnier than an ancient lich suddenly being vulnerable to poison and dying from a single cut. Players getting to use weapon poison was new in Oblivion. In Morrowind it was represented in shorthand with an actual poison spell, which means that we're basically seeing the Morrowind version of weapon poison late in Oblivion, hence why it's so unbalanced. This must have been frustrating to the designer that worked so hard to put balance in a single-player game only to find out that super poisons existed. This isn't even a matter of playtesting, the designers probably just didn't realize the potential of this system. I suppose, then, a small contest of the best swords is in order. Swords tend to be massively overrepresented in fantasy. Our first contender is the Ebony Blade, 23 damage, absorb health 8 points, silence for 10 seconds. While I like the utility value of silence, having it constantly applied means enemies aren't using magic, which means the absurd amount of spell resistance, absorption, and reflection is just going to waste. I want enemies to use magic on me because that means I'm either going to get more magicka back or do more damage to them. Absorbing health is nice though, but only 45 uses? Bruh. Goldbrand, 25 damage, 22 points of fire damage, and 76 uses. Really good, a very popular pick with good reason. Umbra, 28 damage, soul trap for 120 seconds. Soul trapping for so long with a sword is only sensible if you're using poisons, and even then most custom poisons only go on for like 30 seconds. I just think the sword would be better if soul trap only lasted 20 seconds but it got a lot more uses, not that 125 uses is that bad. The problem is that because it does less damage than other swords overall, it takes more swings, thus you use more uses, and while it might keep your soul gems full, that also means constant gem cycling. That said, Umbra has 0 weight until you complete the related quest, which is the real reason it's so popular in Oblivion. I actually never understood why removing weapon weight on equipped weapons wasn't an expert or master perk in Oblivion. Finally, the generic Daedric longsword, 24 damage. With a Transcendent Sigil Stone, you can apply 25 points of absorb health, which will have 40 uses. While it does really good damage and heals to boot, it's also really ugly. Onto our DLC options. Sword of the Crusader. Getting it at level 21 or higher, it'll do 25 damage with 14 points of fire damage for 2 seconds or 28 fire damage, and 40 points of magicka damage on top with a total of 62 uses. Uses are weird because for this sword in particular, its use number is parabolic. At level 7 through 9, you'll get a sword with 125 uses, for instance. Battlehorn Castle adds the Dragon Sword of Lanelan. Without the unofficial patch, the highest level version you can get is the level 20 version since it scales to Lord Cain and not the player, and he maxes at level 20, instead of going up to 25 where you get the best version. Unpatched, the sword will do 18 damage with Absorb Fatigue 21 points for 5 seconds and 20 points of fire damage with only 26 uses. Patched, and you can get the sword to 21 damage with 23 points of Absorb Fatigue for 5 seconds and 25 points of fire damage. Fatigue is kind of a meme in Oblivion, and at level 25 you really shouldn't be losing so much fatigue in combat as to necessitate trading damage for Absorb Fatigue. The Dragon Sword does look cool though. Then we have the Shivering Isles swords. Dawnfang and Duskfang are actually a single blade, alternating form with the time of day. During the day it'll do fire damage, and at night it'll do frost damage. Notable, however, is that if the sword lands 12 killing blows in a single 12-hour period, the next phase will be superior, absorbing health during the day and absorbing magicka at night. The best version is available at level 30 and beyond, doing 25 damage with 15 points of elemental damage and 7 points of absorb. It also recharges when it changes shape, but the nourishment only works when it's charged, so you have to keep it topped off if you want to get the superior effect. It also looks super edgy. Personally, I don't like its design. It feels like the origin of the paddle blades of Skyrim. There's also Amber and Madness weapons, which are slightly better than Daedric's base stats. Same principle, just with one more point of damage. But what about two-handed weapons? Personally, I find the loss in speed to be too big a detriment for two-handers in Oblivion. Because of the way combat works, there's more of an incentive to get more swings downrange than big, high damage swings. And it doesn't help that Oblivion itself is pretty biased towards giving the player one-handed weapons anyways. And what about blunt weapons? Again, the sword bias is strong. You don't get a lot of options for maces and even less for axes. And this held true through the expansions. The Mace of the Crusader has Turn Undead on it, gross. And Shivering Isles provides Nerve Shatter, a hammer with a 0-second weakness to shock effect on it that doesn't do anything. If you're playing with blunt weapons, you're basically holding out for Shadowrend near the end of the Shivering Isles expansion just to get a weapon with comparable stats to a sword. And it's two-handed, and there's a sword version of Shadowrend. Alright, there's one more thing I want to get off my chest in a discussion of magic items in Oblivion, and that's how terrible a lot of them are. There are a ton of unique enchanted items sold at merchants with terrible effects. Picking a random example off a lengthy list, Aegis of the Apocalypse. Fortifies blade, blunt, and heavy armor 5 points. Drains luck 5 points.
Drains health 20 points.
Why? Why are there so many base game items sold by merchants, usually for tens of thousands of gold, that are balanced in their spell effects? Like the Truncheon of Submission. It's funny because it heals the target. That's worth a laugh when you see it. But the Helm of Ferocity drains intelligence, willpower, and personality, and only for the paltry benefit of 5 points to your favored combat stat. It's not like Fortify Blade is worth anything to a hand-to-hand fighter, is it? And you get the Tower of the Nine, which isn't even a tower shield, which drains light armor 10 points. I mean, yeah, it's a heavy shield, but why does it have that effect? The problem is that negative effects still increase the value of enchanted items. It would be one thing if they were cheaper due to having downsides, but they aren't. They're more expensive. I'm not even against this idea. I actually like the mentality of having a trade-off with an item as long as the cost is balanced around that trade-off. I'm not paying 10,000 gold for an item that is handily outclassed by random dungeon loot. Another thing would be the number of items that just demonstrate a lack of understanding of the game's mechanics. I've detailed various items which in the base game effectively have no enchantment because they last for 0 seconds, or are weakness effects that don't apply on strike because that's not how it works in Oblivion, or are armor for spellcasters in the game where spellcasters are penalized for wearing armor. How about this one? The Circlet of Omnipotence. Omnipotence. Unlimited power. You find this ring in a random, easily missed chest during the Pale Pass quest, and all it does is fortify agility, endurance, speed, strength, and willpower by 3 points. 3. You seriously expect someone to give up a valuable ring slot for an enchantment so paltry most players wouldn't even notice the difference when they wore it? So, with our anime protagonist character who reverses a ton of damage on his enemies and is capable of melting hardy opponents, there's only a few side quests left in Cyrodiil for us to do. Oblivion is a world full of side quests. Each city has around a half-dozen side quests not tied to any of the factions, and there are more spread out throughout the world. These can be hit or miss due to the nature of how quests are made at Bethesda. If a programmer decides he wants to make a quest about retrieving a woman's potatoes from an ogre, well, I guess he can. Not that I know who made the potato quest. Again, the nature of credits in these games means that unless it's stated, we don't actually really know who made what in Oblivion. But I don't see a problem with getting a potato quest. Sure, it's not complicated, it's go to X, kill Y, and retrieve Z, one of the most basic quest designs. It's fairly similar in that structure to a lot of other side quests. The only difference is instead of fetching something of lore significance or character implication, it's just prized jumbo potatoes. I think a lot of people who complain about there being simple quests are not thinking about the implications of their request. They are essentially asking that every single quest they get have stakes and lasting consequences. And that's really not a good thing. If you, the person listening to this video, want to do a real-life quest right now, do you want to know what that quest would be? Food delivery. Maybe if you're lucky, someone might need a pest taken care of. The nice thing about mundane quests is that it doesn't take long. 5 minutes for a little bit of flavor and probably only an hour for the designer to make. Little tasks are nice because they make the world feel more grounded. If every quest involves deception and murder and the sins of the past and the cycle of retaliation and a threat that challenges the very fabric of reality, then that makes the main quest feel pointless. I'm supposed to be saving these people, but it turns out that everyone in Cyrodiil has to have some dirty secret uncovered by a quest. What's the point of saving a world where everyone is a bastard? In a role-playing game, the player should be able to define their own reason for their actions, but that means the game also has to have ample opportunity in which to do so. I'm saving the world so that these people can enjoy their quaint lives of waking up in the morning, going for a casual stroll in the park, eating lunch, and then doing 2 hours of work before socializing at a tavern. Or maybe I am the bastard, and I'm saving the world so that a guy like me can take advantage of all these simple folk. The same is true in reverse, of course. Having quests where the player can find and beat the scum of society is great if you're role-playing a vigilante sort of character. I wouldn't want the world to be whitewashed with morally good and simple tasks. It's the diversity of content that makes a role-playing game thrive. So it bothers me when people look at that variety and say there should only be X, only be Y, or it should be more like Z. Let's start with a fan favorite. A Brush with Death. When deciding what quests to cover, I went off of a couple lists of fan favorite side quests, and without fail, this quest has always made it. In Shadenhall, a famous painter has gone missing. I guess the guards and local mages guild are not interested in how this guy just magically disappeared from his studio, or his wife has only told us that he disappeared from within a locked room. Even with the unofficial patch, there's a clipping issue where 2 dressers are clipping through the 2nd floor. Amazing. Our main advantage over the other investigators is being able to intuit where doors are, and this painting is one of them, which transports us into the painted world. When people praise this quest, it isn't because it's particularly complex, but because of how creative this world is. Alan Nanes is the man behind this quest. I don't know if he came up with all of these assets, but he seems to have had the idea to actually make the trees, rocks, sky, and even creatures appear painted. To me, this shows the potential of a game called Oblivion to realize all the different realms of Oblivion. Like how Paradise was visually distinct with just a few minor alterations to the visual aesthetic of the game. Hircine's realm is probably just a black forest. Malakath would be in a more mountainous area. We know Bethesda's capable of doing it because we got the Shivering Isles and Hermaeus Mora's realm in Dragonborn. The only limitation for Oblivion is file space and development time, another victim of the release date curse. So the painter's trapped in this painted world after losing his paintbrush to a thief. The brush was given to him by Dibella and exists as a vanilla example of an Daedric artifact we could have given to Martin. This brush allows its wielder to paint their imagination into this world, which then appears on the canvas. So, why does he have a sketch of a forest if he isn't actually a classical painter? Is it to trick people into thinking he's an oil painter when actually all he does is just VR painting? Which is harder, by the way. Also, side note, if the painting is his imagination, then why is it an impressionist style? Shouldn't it be a realist style, since Writhe would be imagining realistic objects? Or is the implication that it's going off of his memories, which are now impressions? I suspect the answer really is that the style has to be impressionist to convey that it's a painted world, because Bethesda's already attempting to convey realism in their normal aesthetic. While we're killing painted trolls with turpentine, let's discuss Oblivion's aesthetic style. When people discuss style in Howard's Elder Scrolls, realism is the word of the day, and I don't think it's accurate in the least. In fact, each Elder Scrolls game has come with its own unique visual aesthetic. Arena and Daggerfall have very similar styles due to their proximity and release dates. They draw visually from like Dungeons and Dragons, with an emphasis on the human form and contrasting colors with the background. Morrowind inherited the former but lost a lot of the latter. That's why shirtless old dudes are jacked and faces are super exaggerated. Its environment was fairly desaturated, however, and the only time you would see the use of contrast was when characters were dressed brightly compared to their environment, or maybe you would see a blue or red candle lighting up an area. Oblivion is almost a counter-statement to that. Everything is bright and colorful except dungeons, which are desaturated and moody. The unique usage of lighting is gone. In Morrowind, enemies followed a rule of aposematism. The brighter and more colorful they were, the more dangerous they would be. In Oblivion, every enemy is bright and colorful, and level scaling removes most of the danger. The problem is the bulk of this visual discussion almost always stays in the Great Forest and around the Red Ring Road, when Oblivion offers so much more than that. The Gold Coast and Imperial Reserve feature a more golden landscape. Skingrad is intentionally meant to evoke the imagery of a city in the Alps. Blackwood is darker and more humid, fitting a swamp, while the more mountainous regions near Shadenhall and Bruma are desaturated, full of grays and whites. To simply say that Oblivion's world is bright and colorful and cheery is dishonest, and is akin to saying that Vardenfell was entirely an ashy wasteland.
It actually has trees, unlike Vardenfall.
I'm not going to focus on Skyrim's visual design yet because this isn't the video for it. I don't think they improved, but I do think that Skyrim is beautiful. Anyways, we managed to get to the thief's body, who was killed by his own painted trolls, and the painter uses it to teleport us out of the painted world. He gives us his apron, which fortifies agility and intelligence of all things. And yeah, this quest really is popular just because it's visually distinct. It goes to show a short dungeon crawl can be made interesting when you use a unique design. Where spirits have lease. Something new to Oblivion is the ability to buy houses. In Morrowind, the only player home you could get legally were the strongholds, which weren't always ideal given they weren't in central locations and were gated behind the Great House content. Oblivion changed this for the better by offering houses for sale in each city. This was one of the main money sinks in Oblivion, since houses cost several thousand gold, if not tens of thousands of gold. The DLC would then break that by offering houses for real money that were effectively free once you installed them. Anvil offers the player a moderately sized house on the cheap as well at only 5,000 gold. So when the player turns around to find that the house is haunted, well, this caught people by surprise. This is another one of those essential quests that people recommend. Velwyn Veneris, the guy who sold us this place, immediately skips town as soon as he has his money. We confront him in the big city and he feels guilty and is willing to return with us to Anvil. He offers to help us with exorcising the place, as his blood is needed to open a wall in the basement. He flees as soon as it's open, and we confront the Lich, Lorgren Benaris, down in the basement. This quest is pretty simple, and it involves traveling back and forth a lot, but it's themed really well. The basement is spooky, and there's even a Necronomicon, which I consider a fun element to the house since it sticks around even after the house is restored.
I am Lorgren Benaris, and I desire the chance to atone for my sins.
Sorry, music's a little loud. You were saying?
The things I've done to the people of Anvil, the horrible, unspeakable acts I've committed, demand repentance. Garahil was justified in his actions. Slaying me was the only way to stop the madness. I have accepted that fate. Now, so I may make my final peace with the Nine, please rejoin my hand to my body. Only then, when I am complete, will this eternal nightmare end. It never fails to amuse me how easy mortal man is to manipulate. You've assisted me in completing the very thing Garahil and his cabal sought to prevent all those years ago. My ascension to immortality. Last time I clashed with mortals, I underestimated their power. I shall not repeat that mistake twice. I live again.
We have to kill Lorgren, who's become a Lich, but that isn't a problem because he's not that powerful. Maybe I might criticize Velwyn for foolishly selling the house. He should have invested in hiring an adventurer to take care of the Lich, and then the property value would have gone up, resulting in more money for him. But it's part of his character, so it fits. Also, you get a line from Garahil at the local Mages Guild about this.
I've heard you were able to lift the curse from Benaris Manor and destroy Lorgren Benaris once and for all. I thank you for completing the task I set about to do long ago. His unholy craft will no longer threaten the citizens of Anvil. Well done.
Zero visibility. It speaks volumes that such an obvious and intentionally dumb village name is the setting of such a prolific quest. Everyone in All Is Well, you know what I'm calling it, Ailswell, has turned invisible and they want us to reverse it. Turns out they live near a wizard who they've taken to blaming for it, but they can't confirm this because, well, they can't find him. I have to use a detect life spell to track him down, and we find him living in the tower with a bunch of invisible creatures. He got tired of getting harassed by the villagers, so he cooked up an invisibility spell with an area effect. Only problem was, the radius of the spell included the village, so unknowingly, he actually turned all of those people invisible. There's an entire conversation, and unless you're polite or boost his disposition, you might not get all the tools you need. He gives us a scroll to reverse the spell, but we have to cast it in the middle of town, and he can give us a ring while we do it, or it'll end up damaging our luck. Honestly, why aren't there more spells that are made more powerful if you incorporate downsides into them? Our reward for fixing the village is free lodging at the Ailswell Inn, which includes a safe chest to store stuff, basically a free house to live in. Given its proximity to the starting location, it's fair to say the developers may have intended us to encounter this village on our way to Wayne Priory as a first quest, which is probably why it's so simple yet popular. A Shadow over Hackdirt, with its obvious reference to the 1968 film Shadow over Elveron, is another quest considered part of the essential Oblivion experience. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't get it.
That joke didn't land because people didn't realize how insignificant this random 1968 film adaptation of a novel with no Wikipedia article was compared to Shadow over Innsmouth.
I don't think I've ever actually done this quest correctly, or if I have, then I don't understand what the excitement's about. The quest apparently starts with a young Argonian woman approaching us. If the footage is missing, it's because I literally do not remember this happening.
Hello, I don't think we've met. Are you new in town? Oh, well, I'm sorry for bothering you. My mother often says I'm too forward with strangers.
I do, however, remember her mother asking me to find her missing daughter, mostly because her mother's the advanced mercantile trainer and would ask me to try and find her missing daughter every time I rolled into Coral for training. No, don't worry, I'll go looking for her. Eventually. Dharma, I'm not sure if her name is intentionally meant to refer to the religious concept of Dharma, volunteered to handle business for her mother in Hackdirt, a village located deep within the Great Forest. It's not exactly the richest of places, but then again, they did decide to name their settlement Hackdirt, so perhaps it's an intentional living style. It is not. The locals don't exactly take kindly to strangers in these parts here. Maybe Hackdirt stands out to people because it's the only place where NPCs aren't weirdly cheerful to the player. Being told to fuck off probably caught a lot of people off guard. The merchant Dharma was supposed to meet claims they've not seen her, and makes demands of us to boot. Nobody else in town is much help, but it's very apparent they aren't exactly the kind to trust. That's why it seems questionable that Sydney— wait, seriously? That's her name? She's weirdly popular with the, artistic community too. Anyways, it's questionable that she would ever, in a million years, allow her daughter within a mile of Hackdirt. I can imagine being called a piece of Dunmer farm equipment was the least of the things Sydney has had to endure while trading with these people. Seedson suggested that if the villagers didn't know where her daughter was, to look for her daughter's beloved horse Blossom. And sure enough, we find it without the daughter. A villager will deny foul play, saying that they've owned the horse for years. We're eventually approached and told to stop asking questions lest the brethren get involved. After trying to persuade several people to help me, there were just no leads. It's a shame the villagers don't change their tune with a higher disposition. They'll have the variable that normally indicates they should like the player, and then they'll still tell us that we're unwelcome. So eventually I just take to looking for clues in people's houses and eventually find a trap door into a cave system. After a small bit of stealth, I find Dharma in a cage and I set her free, and we walk back to Coral with 0 resistance. Yeah, I think I did it wrong. There's a whole story here about the history of Hackdirt and how this cult took over and these creatures that roam the caves, and escaping with Dharma is supposed to be a challenge. And despite having done this quest twice, I've never experienced any of that. And yet, I approve. Thing is, having the freedom to somehow mess this quest up enough to actually pull off a rescue without any lives being lost is kind of interesting. It's apparent from reading the UESP that I missed the one NPC who can actually help us and just barely missed the events where I'm supposed to get ambushed. I didn't do it how the designers intended clearly, but I could still do it, and that's emergent storytelling. Kudai, at the Breville Mages Guild, wants us to help her with her missing friend who's gone missing inside of a dream world. Already this sounds like 2 quests we've done already smashed into one. I theorized back in the Mages Guild section that this quest in particular may have been the original recommendation quest and grew it to its own dedicated side quest. The reason Kudai needs help is that she needs a stranger to enter the dream world. If she entered, her friend Hinnatir would just dismiss her as a memory. Upon entering, we find most of our equipment has disappeared, and in order to escape, we have to help Hinnatir with 4 trials to escape. If this premise sounds familiar, that's because the Mind of Madness would redo this quest in Skyrim as Sheogorath's quest. The first test, the Test of Perception, is a challenging gauntlet of various traps the player may encounter while playing the game. Or it is, in theory, had the animations not broken so the traps move in slow motion. The second test, the Test of Resolve, gives us a bunch of freebie gear and pits us against a couple Minotaurs. The third test, the Test of Courage, is a short swimming sequence that the game makes sure to provide ample water-breathing potions to help with. It's not that difficult. The final test is the Test of Patience. If that isn't fitting for Oblivion, then I don't know what is. We're given a scroll which shows 3 patterns that match the pressure plate series in front of us. The player can recognize a pattern of similar characters drawing out the path through the plates, or we could just run through. The traps don't spell our death or anything, and doing it right is not a condition for escaping. With all 4 tests completed, Hinnatir's therapy session is over and we return to the real world. We're given 6 leveled scrolls, and that's the quest. I think this harkens back to our discussion on puzzles. This appears to be the extent that either Bethesda can design puzzles or is willing to make them difficult. I'm sure a major concern with this quest was trapping players inside the dream world who may not have saved before entering. Its simplicity may be for another reason, however. This appears to be the only documented quest of Megan Sawyer, an environmental artist you can see in the Making of Oblivion documentary working on her main job during Oblivion, which was the city of Shadenhall. What's funny is that I wouldn't have known Megan Sawyer had worked on this quest if she herself hadn't put her name on it, which was apparently an accident. She included it to fill space on the letter puzzle and then forgot to remove it later. I'm not asking for Metal Gear Solid V tier credit sequence here, but if there was a tag in the construction set where devs could leave their signatures, we'd probably have a pretty clear image of who created what quests. If this accident hadn't happened, I wouldn't have found Sawyer's website, which happened to answer the question about the Brush of Death quest I had. Nanas may have designed the quest, but the reason people remember it is because of Sawyer's visual contributions. Order of the Virtuous Blood. After you reach a fame value of 5, which is super easy, a Dunmer woman will approach you in the Temple District. Her husband, Gillen, wants us to meet his boyfriend, Dio Brando, who's heading up a vampire hunting organization. He gives us a name and tells us about how they're a vampire and they killed an innocent woman, only for it to be revealed on arrival that Roland did no such thing. Roland will claim that he is not a vampire and that neither party looks like vampires, I guess implying that they fed recently and thus can't be detected with just the eye test. Killing Roland nets an easy 250 Gs, but going after Dio is much more profitable, since Roland will afterwards pay us 250 gold for each sample of vampire dust we bring him. It's a shame neither Dio's nor Roland's houses have any garlic in them as clues. Although we do find 2 bottles of skooma in Roland's house. Hell yeah, cheers, brother. Even though Dio is a vampire, he still makes visits over to the first edition to purchase literature. Hey, Fentius. Fentius, always willing to gossip, tells us that he overheard Dio mention Memorial Cave. To who exactly? Well, whatever, we head out and find his vampire lair, where he lives with 12 other vampire- Wait, what? I mean, heading up the only local vampire hunting organization in Cyrodiil and then killing off its competent members is certainly a good scam for a vampire to run, assuming Dio is the patriarch. Roland, as a reward for clearing his name, will give us the Ring of Sunfire, resist disease, whatever, but 25% spell reflection at level 25 is fair. The game's over at this point anyways, but still, that's an insane ring to say the least. The Killing Field. Whoops, I haven't written it yet. When we step out of the prison sewers and into the world for the first time, the first dungeon that's immediately visible is Vilverin. Vilverin features an Iliad statue in a difficult-to-miss location. The statue is extremely valuable, but when you sell it, you'll eventually be approached and asked to visit Umbacano Manor in the Imperial City. Umbacano is a high elf collector of Iliad artifacts, particularly the 10 Ancestors, a set of statues that used to reside in the Imperial City but were scattered across Cyrodiil during the Slave Rebellion. Umbacano wants to pay us to retrieve the statues for him and will pay us 500 gold per. Note that he doesn't give us any clues as to where to go for statue number 2. There are 53 Iliad ruins, and only 9 of them have statues inside them. We do get clues later after we find the second statue, but for now we just have to dungeon dive and hope for the best. Oh, and in at least one ruin I managed to miss the location of the statue due to it being hidden. After 3 statues, we get the next quest. There's no fancy reward for completing the set beyond 5,000 gold plus the 5,000 you'll make from selling the statues, so you might as well not bother. Umbacano will give us a key and ask that we seek out the location of a ruin called the High Fane. No relation. I'm not sure where, but at some point in the playthrough I happen to have read a book called Cleansing the High Fane, so in a rare moment of lore integration, our character will actually offer up the name and location of the ruin. You will also know if you've been to the ruin as you'll recognize the drawing. Otherwise, we head outside and get approached by Cloud Merrick. He's a fellow treasure hunter who works for Umbacano and will heavily push the player towards finding the ruin, which obviously turns out to be a trap when we arrive to find sightseers adorned in Daedric and glass armor. The ruin's pretty simple, and when we leave, the ambush occurs. I hand over the statue before immediately stealing it back because that's definitely the funniest outcome. It's also really easy to do because the carving has no value or weight, even though it would almost certainly have both. All you get is again gold for turning in the carving, so you could at least let him have it, because you'll still get the third quest. Finally, we're given the third quest of the trilogy. Umbacano gives us 1,000 gold and tells us to get another collector to turn over their Iliad crown. Said collector is an Iliad researcher who reveals that the crown is probably not suited to belonging to Umbacano, as he has ulterior motives, and suggests that we give him a different crown. I steal her crown anyways, and then we get the other crown and head back to Umbacano. He's thrilled and requests we escort him through the ruined city of Nenalata. And he is not essential, so you might want to clear out all 10 liches first. There is some absurd stuff in this game, but the fact that liches show up as common enemies in dungeons in the late game is one of the most absurd things I've ever heard. In broader fantasy, a lich is a master of necromancy, perfecting his art to the degree that he transfers his soul into his own immortal undead body. This action is not casually performed, and liches are often the primary antagonists of stories, either due to some maintenance requirements to keep their form, or their magic turning them evil. The idea that multiple liches share living space, or even that 2 liches work together, is absurd, and the game even represents this by putting liches into their own faction with adversarial relationships with necromancers. Yet at level 19, you'll start finding the Iliad ruins are full of random liches, and masters of conjuration can even summon the form of a lich. Sorry for saying it so many times, but come on, dungeon masters spawning tons of liches in order to kill their players is a known meme. So when Umbacano sits down on the throne, and it turns him into the King of Nenalata and opens 2 monster closets with 4 liches inside them, yeah, I'm fading.
I'm pretty fond of the Umbacano quest. I think it represents some of the things that we wanted to carry forward into future games, both in terms of pacing and connectivity, making things feel organic in the world, and in terms of how the feel of the final encounter was. Back in those Wild West days, sometimes the final encounter was you put a guy down in the world and he's just really tough and you have to beat him. Well, here we actually made an actual encounter that you had to deal with that felt like it was more like a boss encounter. So I'm particularly fond of that. And when I talk about the natural world stuff with the Umbacano quest, you find something in the world, the quest is waiting for that. And when you find that, somebody comes and talks to you. So it feels like the world is natural, and that's a very cool moment.
The only real reward that isn't the generic Iliad loot we get along the way and could have gotten from any of the ruins are the 2 Iliad crowns. The Crown of Nenalata, which fortifies Alteration and Conjuration 15 points and reflects spells 25%, pretty good. And the Crown of Linde, which fortifies Alteration and Illusion 15 points and resists magic 35%. Nice. These are fine rewards, except they're spellcasting focused helms with armor values, making the whole thing questionable. This is where I'm going to move on from the side quests, but I hear you say, where's the Everscamp quest? Where's the Siren's Deception? Where's Tears of the Savior? Where's Pale Pass? I think to neatly close off this section, Oblivion is fondly remembered for its side quests, because many of them tried to have unique or entertaining premises, making them memorable. Everybody's going to have their own side quest they'll want to have seen covered, but necessarily can't be. Not every side quest is that complicated or interesting. The Ghost Ship of Anvil is about exorcising ghosts from a boat. But as I said at the beginning, that's not grounds to cut it simply because it's not bombastic. To me, there's a sort of thrill starting a side quest that you think is going to be simple, only for it to become more complicated as time goes on. Sanguine's quest in Skyrim is a good example. That surprise only works when you have quests around it that aren't complicated for it to better blend in. If Skyrim only consisted of its top 20 most bombastic quests, then Sanguine would not have been a surprise and thus would not have been as interesting. There's one more variety of quests I want to talk about in Oblivion, and those are the Master Trainer quests. All 21 of them tend to work the exact same way. You reach skill level 70, an advanced trainer will recommend you to a Master Trainer. In order to offer their services, all the Master Trainers will have some sort of request, usually related to their skill. The Sneak Trainer wants you to steal a coin from her. The Mysticism Trainer wants you to close 3 Oblivion gates. The Marksman Trainer wants you to own an Elven bow. The Heavy Armor Trainer wants you to get him a set of silver glasses for an innkeeper he likes. The Hand-to-Hand Trainer wants you to spar with him. The Destruction Trainer wants 20 bear pelts. The Conjuration Trainer wants you to summon a ghost. I think the most unique one is the Alteration Trainer, who lives in the Niben Bay, and yeah, he spends most of the day underwater. He'll only offer training to the player if they can survive underwater for 3 in-game hours or 6 minutes of real time. This is not terribly challenging, especially if you're skill level 70 in Alteration, but it's a great quest idea. The player is either expected to know magic or be Argonian. Skyrim got lazy with this, likely because there weren't enough people using trainers to even notice the effort that was going into their quests. So for the most part, the 18 Master Trainers of Skyrim simply required you to either be a member of the Stabbers, Skulkers, or Weird Boys factions. So I put out some feelers after my Oblivion research streams that anyone who had made an Oblivion video was invited to do a short collaboration where they discuss a side quest and their experiences with Oblivion. This was intended to be an olive branch of sorts to the channels I covered in my streams. Instead, the 2 creators I hadn't covered were the only ones to respond, From Hero to Zero and Private Sessions. The former because his video came out after I had finished, and Private Sessions simply because he wasn't really on anyone's radar until after.
A Brotherhood Betrayed has the player investigating a murder in the city of Bruma. Only thing is, the culprit has already been found by the guards and found not guilty. Reynold Dreyless was caught in the house belonging to Braden, and when the guards found him, Reynold claimed to be a vampire hunter and that Braden had been a vampire living a double life. Due to some circumstantial evidence and word from Skingrad, the guards of Bruma are quick to believe Reynolds' claim. The only problem is that Braden's wife is convinced her husband was no vampire. The evidence the guards are leveling against her husband is faulty, and she's able to dismiss it all quite readily.
Help me clear my husband's name. Someone needs to get Sciota under control.
She believes this is a perversion of justice and asks the player to get to the bottom of it. Carius belittles the player's involvement in the investigation as he's already content with the flimsy explanation that supports the word of the supposed vampire slayer.
Keep up the good work, I suppose.
But if the player does a little snooping at the inn where Reynold is staying at, they will find a journal belonging to another victim of Reynold, proving that Braden, Reynold, and the journal's author all knew each other years back and found a powerful artifact while adventuring. It would seem Reynold decided to start murdering his former partners for their keys to the chest containing the artifact. When Carius is told this and shown the journal, he does an immediate 180 and puts the player onto Reynolds' trail to serve justice. At Borealstone Cave, the player finds the chest and Reynold, who decided to wait rather than, use the keys and run off with the amulet. He refuses to surrender, opting to take his chances in combat rather than rot in a Bruma dungeon for a double homicide. He's really forthcoming with his motivations, more or less narrating and telegraphing everything he's thinking and about to do. He then wishes the player good luck in killing him, and then gets killed by the player. The player then takes possession of the keys and the amulet, which doesn't seem to do anything special at all. Upon returning to Braden's widow, she informs the player that Braden had a special spell put on the amulet to mask its true purpose. She whispers the special word that undoes the spell, it's Brotherhood, by the way, and then gives the player the amulet as a reward, which just turns out to be a meager fortify speed enchantment. Yeah, that's right, 3 men died over a necklace that fortifies speed. Hello, I am Private Sessions. You may know me as the owner of a YouTube channel called Private Sessions. I used to have the longest Oblivion retrospective on YouTube until Patrician came along and made one longer. Patrician asked if I wanted to cover a quest in his video and talk about my experiences with Oblivion. So here I am, covering a quest in his video and talking about my experiences with Oblivion. When I started playing Oblivion 15 years ago, I never would have thought it would one day make me mildly YouTube famous. It's been a fun and exciting adventure. And is this style of narration really boring and annoying? Because this is literally how this quest is written. Whoever wrote, designed, and made this quest seemed to not understand what the old writing rule of show don't tell means, because this entire quest is spelled out in painfully dull, almost monotonous detail. Like, let's just read a couple of excerpts from the journal we find. It's quiet out here, as if the ruins were paying respect to the alien inhabitants that disappeared here long ago. Or how about this one? As we carefully walked along, I scanned the floor and the walls very carefully for any type of triggers, tripwires, or pressure plates. Such was my specialty. The entire quest sounds, reads, and plays like this is the first story the designer ever wrote, and if Bethesda had even remotely tighter quality control mechanisms, this quest would have, at the very least, been rewritten to sound less amateur. And once again, I just can't get over the fact that the keyword to unlock the amulet is Brotherhood, you know, like the name of the quest and the name of the adventuring group. And the thing just fortifies speed. Woo! Anyways, thanks to Patrician for including me in this video. Oblivion is a fun game. Go play it.
Hey there. You probably don't know me. I'm from Hero to Zero. Actually, now that I think about it, you might. Because apparently, after watching an 8-hour-long Morrowind video, a lot of people went, what's another 1.5 hour, am I right? Basically, before Pat uploaded his grandiose 8-hour epic, I was sitting at a very modest 11 subscribers. But then, suddenly. Anyways, a year and a half go by, during which I'm comfortably riding the coattails of seemingly everyone that's uploaded a video on Morrowind, trying to reach out to Pat with a joke tweet which he replies to and promptly forgets about. Well, who can blame him? This is Twitter after all. And working on other projects, I finally release my take on Oblivion. For some reason, my videos on the Elder Scrolls series and Pat's sphere of influence seems to be intertwined. Maybe by sheer coincidence or some other cosmic force, but either way, someone picked up my Oblivion video and posted it in the Patrician TV Discord server. One thing led to another, and here I am, guest appearing on what I'm certain will be the definitive Oblivion video on YouTube. But hey, you're not here to hear me talk about myself, so let's get into the meat of things. As we all know, a great narrative needs a protagonist that is tailor-made for the role, which is why I have crafted the most optimized detective known to man. A huge cranium to house his galaxy-sized brain, pronounced eyebrows for optimal eyebrow movement when scrutinizing his suspects, huge eyes whose pupillary distance has been stretched to the very limit of human understanding for unparalleled situational awareness, and, of course, a little something for the ladies. This is the great detective. His one and only purpose after breaking out of the Imperial prison is to find the perpetrator of a most heinous crime committed against the Countess of Coral. You can go to Castle Coral at any time and talk with Ariana to learn of the ongoing investigation surrounding a stolen painting of her deceased husband. Canvas the Castle, as it's called, is a somewhat unique quest in Oblivion. For one, there's absolutely no fighting involved, even if you were to accuse the wrong person, but the quest also expects you to figure things out on your own without any sort of guide. If you accept the Countess's plea for help, she'll point you in the direction of the 2 last suspects and 3 witnesses who you'll need to interrogate to get to the truth. Interestingly enough, her descriptions of where you can find them are so good that the quest markers become superfluous. Actually, after having finished the interrogations, the quest markers disappear completely. At that point, there's nothing telling you where to go to look for clues. I think this is the only time that happens in Oblivion. Having the people in question spill the beans is merely a matter of getting them to like you enough. But let's get real here, what's not likable about this face? Each person gives a small nugget of information that, when combined with the rest of the testimonies, should give a pretty clear answer to who the culprit is. There is still a need for hard proof though, so it's a shame that there's none of it here. Basically, instead of finding proof that corroborates with the different pieces of information to, and excuse the pun, paint a picture of what happened on the night of the crime, you find circumstantial evidence, such as an actual painting in one of the towers, footprints of paint on a carpet in the dining hall, and painting supplies that have been hidden in a lectern. Like, why wouldn't you leave your brushes and stuff in a place they're protected? How are footprints in the dining room, which could have been left there by literally anyone, damning evidence? How do you come to the conclusion that someone being into painting means they also steal paintings? The culprit is, of course, meant to be Chanel. You'd have to have a previously undiscovered level of dyslexia to think that the culprit is Orgnolf. True, one of the witness reports states that they saw him drinking in the West Tower, the same place as the painting is found, but that same statement also says that he quit doing it after he was caught, so that theory barely even enters the room before it's flung back out through the window. You can still accuse him of the theft though, but the only thing that happens is that there's an added voice line from the Countess and a decreased reward. There's also an option to straight up lie and say you never found anything. The reward from the Countess is barely worth the effort, but Chanel will be so grateful that she offers to paint you a picture as thanks. It's just you'd have to wait 3 whole weeks for it to be finished. The canon route for the Great Detective, though, was always meant to be the one where the culprit is exposed and the painting is returned to its rightful owner. He doesn't give a crap about some lame sob story.
I am ashamed that I took the painting, but my love for the Count was greater than you could imagine.
Chanel gets exiled from Coral, and all that's left is to admire the fruits of... hang on. Admire the fruits of the investigation's success. It's almost enough to bring a tear to an old hard-boiled detective's eye.
This is your last warning. Get out or I'll arrest you.
Shit.